Hey everyone, welcome back to this QuarkCube video series. Today we are going to talk about an amazing feature in QuarkCube which we favorably call avatars, right? And there are four ways in which you could see the avatars in action. They are the avatar dimensions, we have the avatar cells, avatar hierarchies, and then we have avatar calculations. But not to worry, I'm going to explain all of them to you using short demos, okay? But before that, a little theory on how the avatars become possible in QuarkCube, right? What is the foundational elements based on which the avatars work, right? Now, I'll explain it using a business model, which many of you should be familiar in case you have watched my previous video. So let's take the case of an imaginary company called Hero Corporation, who have a business model to analyze their revenue. And the model has 5 dimensions: scenario, account, product, channel, and finally the time dimension. Now you all know by now that in QC, for dimensions of type general, account, and entity, right, we can create multiple hierarchies per dimension. So let's say the account dimension in this particular model has 2 hierarchies, and the product dimension also has 2 hierarchies. And the remaining 3 dimensions have 1 hierarchy each, right? Now, how are these hierarchies different? What are hierarchies used for, right? Why do we even need multiple hierarchies per dimension? So let me walk you through using an example. So consider the product dimension, right? Now in the first hierarchy, we have categorized the products based on its nature. So aerated products parent has Coke, Coke Zero, and Diet Coke, while the fruit-based parent has lemonade and Simply Orange. So when you try to analyze the sales numbers or the cost numbers, right, you will see the aggregation of these products against its parent, right, which is aerated products and then fruit-based products. Now, if you would like to analyze the sales numbers in a different view, such as moving Diet Coke under fruit-based. Now, I know it's not a fruit-based, but just imagine for a second, right? You can simply create an additional hierarchy on the product dimension. There is a button that I'm going to show you. You click on it, an additional hierarchy is created, and then you can copy the tree from the first hierarchy to the second hierarchy and simply change the parent of Diet Coke, like what you can see in the screen right now. You could have a third hierarchy where you are analyzing the numbers, the sales numbers on a completely different category, such as beverages. Or you could have another hierarchy where you extend the Coke product into further leaf members, such as Minute Maid and Country Time, right? Now, what data you see really depends on the view that you are looking at, right? And those views are what we call as Quark views. So going back to our example, the revenue analysis model will have one Quark view for every dimensional combination. So in this case, we have 4 Quark views, right? If you notice, the first Quark view is created using the first hierarchy, hierarchy 1 of all the dimensions, while the second Quark view has the second hierarchy of the account dimension and the first hierarchy of the remaining 4 dimensions, right? Similarly, Quark view 3 and Quark view 4 represent the other unique dimensional combinations that can be formed, right? Let me take this a step further. Imagine we have a business model with just 3 dimensions, and each of those 3 dimensions have 10 hierarchies each. Then the unique dimensional combination is determined by simply multiplying all the dimension hierarchies, right? That would be 10 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 10, which is equal to 1,000 Quark views. Now, not to be scared, all of these are managed internally. None of this complexity is exposed to the end user. All that the end user needs to know is the QuarkView number, and then you should be able to pull up the right analysis. Right? I'm going to show this in a demo. It's extremely simple. All the QuarkViews are managed internally by the platform. Now, this is what makes the avatars possible. Very simple and easy to understand, but provides some complex analytics out there. Right? Let's head into the product demo now, and I'll show you how the avatars work.
So first of all, I want to show you how to create multiple hierarchies within a dimension, right? So let me log in back to QuarkCube Studio and go to Hierarchies, right? And I'll select the product dimension which we created in the last demo, if you remember, right? It already has two hierarchies, hierarchy 1 and hierarchy 2. Let's look at what do we have in the first hierarchy. So if you click on view hierarchy, you'll see that aerated drinks has Coke, Diet Coke, and Coke Zero, right? Then if you look at the second hierarchy, you have the same products but categorized using a different product. Now let's create a third hierarchy and try to move a product into a different category, right? All that you need to do is to click on add hierarchy. And then you will notice here that only two hierarchies existed. Now we have a third hierarchy. Now you would see that the third hierarchy does not have any members by default. But let's do this. Let's go back to hierarchy 1. Use copy hierarchy to copy the members, the entire tree from hierarchy 1 to hierarchy 3. Okay, and then go to hierarchy 3. Notice that all the members, the entire hierarchy, the parent and child relationship have moved. Let's try changing the parent of some member, right? So let's move lemonade from fruit-based to energy drinks. So all that you need to do is go here, change the parent. Just select energy drinks, submit, and then save. And now when I view hierarchy, you will see that lemonade is now under energy drinks, right? That's as simple as it gets. You can create additional hierarchies, and then in the hierarchies, you can have parent-child relationships that are specific to that hierarchy. Now, if you do not like these names that are created by default, you can give custom names for the hierarchies as well. Let me quickly do that. Going back to dimension screen, I'm selecting the product dimension. And then if you see here, hierarchy names, right? So I name the first hierarchy as packaging 1, and then packaging 2, and then packaging 3. And then I hit a save. I go back to hierarchy screen, and then you will notice that the hierarchies have custom names as well. So that's another feature of QuarkView. Now, after you start adding these hierarchies, if you want the business model to be updated with the QuarkViews, all that you need to do is go to the business model screen and then select the business model over here and then click on QuarkViews Rebuild. Now, this is a backend job that will be submitted. You can go to the process tab and then wait for the job to be completed. It takes probably a minute or two for all the QuarkViews to be refreshed. There you go. It's done now. And if you want to see what are the various QuarkViews that were created, you can go back to the business model and then click on QuarkViews. Right? So this particular business model has 3 QuarkViews. Okay, and what are the combinations of dimensions? you can actually observe over here. Right? So this is about how you create the hierarchies and then modify the hierarchies accordingly. So now that we understand the concept of Quark views, let us see the Quark views in action. And reports is where you actually see the Quark views in action, right? So let's go to the reports and then select the business model on which we want to view the reports, and then go to the layout builder. Now this is where you define the dimensional intersection for which you want to view the reports. We'll have to select members for all the dimensions in the model. The first one is the measure dimension. By default it shows amount, so if you double click, amount is the only measure available, but I also have calculated measures for QTD and then YTD, which I just enter in the calculated measure column. And for account, for this example, I want to view based on the first hierarchy. And then what are we trying to analyze? Let's try to analyze gross profit. Now channel obviously has only one hierarchy. Let's try to analyze the gross profit at the total channel level. Now product, now this is what I'm trying to show. While we run the report for the first time, let's analyze it based on packaging 1, which is general hierarchy 1. And then when we run it the second time, let's select the third hierarchy, which is packaging 2, right? And let's try to analyze the gross profit at the parent level, which is aerated drinks, fruit based, energy drinks, and natural. Okay, actual scenario, then time, let's analyze it at December 20. Let's hide the ID column so that we only view the description, the member descriptions in the report. Then I say run report. All right, so this is the gross profit of products at the category fruit based, natural, energy drinks, and aerated drinks, right? And you're viewing the numbers for the month of December. You're viewing MTD, QTD, and YTD. Let's copy this. Let's copy this in an Excel sheet just to compare it again after running it on the third hierarchy. Right, so let's go back here, go back to the layout builder, and this time for products, let's select the third hierarchy, save it, and then run the report, and then we'll compare it with the first report. There you have the report. Now notice that for fruit-based and aerated drinks, right, over here, there is absolutely no difference at the parent level. These are all same, right? However, for the category natural and energy drink, the numbers have varied. Why? Because we have moved a product from the category natural to the parent called energy drinks, and that's why you see that the numbers are different. So this is avatar hierarchies, right? Quark views in action, where depending on the packaging, the aggregated numbers vary. Let me show you another example, right? So let's look at the second hierarchy of the product. So if you change the hierarchy in the layout designer to the second hierarchy, and then you double click over here, you will not even see the nature of the categories, right? Aerated drinks, you see a different roll up altogether because this is the roll up that we have defined in the second hierarchy. So let us select owned and distributor. Now the same gross profit, we are analyzing it based on a different aggregation path. Right, and this is the power of avatar hierarchies coming in. And there you go. So you're looking at gross profit, but on a different product hierarchy. Okay. So I now want to walk you through the next concept, which is called the avatar cells, right? So basically what I want to show you is the same member, the same intersection, okay? But will show you different numbers depending on the Quark view, depending on the hierarchy that you are looking at. So in this example, let's take the case of account dimension. Let me go back to hierarchies. Let's look at the account dimension over here. All right, so account dimension has two hierarchies. And in the first hierarchy, if you see, the sales account is a leaf member, right? It's just a child under gross profit. You load your TB against sales. And in the second hierarchy, you see that sales is a parent and it has two further child, which is domestic sales and international sales, right? So you can input data against sales as well. You can input data against domestic sales and international sales. But depending on which view you are looking at, you will either see the data that was input at the sales member or the aggregation of domestic sales and international sales at the parent member called sales. So let's look at what data has been entered, right? Let's go to model data entry. All right, what are we looking at? Let's add a sales account as well over here. All right, so what are we looking at? So for the online channel, for the Coke product, actual scenario and Jan of 2020, we have entered data for domestic sales, international sales, and also for the member called sales, right? So for the member called sales, we have input 200,690. And then for domestic sales, it's 120,000, and for international sales, it is 96,000. Now, depending on which view you're looking at, sales will either display 200,000 or the sum of domestic sales and international sales. So let's quickly go to reports and check that out as well. Select the model, go back to the layout builder. I'll add the calculated measures as well, and notice how the calculated measure just keeps aggregating based on the context that you select, right? It really does not depend on any specific member. It just works across the same way consistently. Now, what are we looking at? So we're looking at the sales account, right? We're looking at the sales account. We are looking at the online channel. We're looking at the Coke product. Actual scenario. 2020-01-01, which is Jan. Let's hide all the IDs and save it. Save the layout and then run the report. Right. So now, because we are looking at the first hierarchy, we should be looking at the data that was input against the sales account, right, which is 200,690. However, when we quickly change the hierarchy, remember, we are only changing the hierarchy. The intersection of the cell remains the same. And I save it. You will see that sales will show a number which is basically the aggregation of your domestic sales and international sales. So let me add that as well so that you can quickly see. Okay. Sales, domestic sales. Then you run the report. So basically it's the sum of domestic sales and international sales. So domestic sales was 120,000, international sales 96,000. The sum of the two is 216,000. So this is the concept of avatar cells. The dimensional intersection remains the same, but depending on which Quark view you are looking at, you will be looking at that particular aggregation or that particular number, that particular analysis. So now let's look at the next concept that I wanted to talk about today, right? Which is called the avatar dimension. Now dimensions themselves can play different avatars, right? Within the same business model, a single dimension can be used multiple times. How? Let me show you. So let's take the example of a model which maintains currency exchange rates, right? So let's create a currency dimension. Currency of type currency, and then save it. Let's add a few members to it. So let's add INR, GBP, SGD. All right, and then save them. Now let's try to create a model, a new business model which uses the same currency dimension for both the from currency and the to currency, right? So let's add a model, call it rates, and then let's try to assign dimensions to it. So let's assign currency and call it from currency. Let's assign the same dimension and call it to currency. Let's assign the time dimension, right? We certainly need time because we need to store exchange rates against time. So again, this is the same dimension that I used in the revenue analysis model. I'm using the same dimension here and giving it a model specific name as well. And then we need a measure dimension. That's it. So see how the same dimension is playing multiple roles within the business model. So this is what we call avatar dimensions. So I save, the model is created. And then when you go into the model data entry, you should be able to select the from currency, the to currency, the time. So let's say Jan of 2020, and also enter the rates and save it. All right, so this is how the avatar dimensions work. So the last feature I want to touch upon is the power of avatar calculations, right? You know that QuarkCube can have calculated measures, but the calculated measures can play different roles depending on the Quark view. All right, so that's what I'm talking about. So let me quickly walk you through a functional example, and then let's see how we can leverage the avatar calculation for this functional use case. So you already know that we have a product hierarchy where we have a product called Dasani under the natural packaging in hierarchy 1. So all that we are trying to do is to get a percentage of the sales of Dasani product with respect to its parent. All right. So in the first hierarchy, Dasani is under natural drinks, and then in the second packaging, in the second hierarchy, basically, you will see that Dasani is under energy drinks, right? So depending on the Quark view, the percentage of Dasani versus the total sales of natural, and in the second Quark view, we need to see the percentage of Dasani against the total sales of energy drink. So this is the functional use case. Let's see how we can achieve it. So I'll quickly go to the Dimensions tab and try to add a calculated measure against the measured dimension that we have used in our revenue analysis model. All right. So while defining the calculated measure for the first time, I will simply map it to the input column, right? So the input column is amount here. I'm creating a calculated measure here. So let me say product total. Okay. Then name is same. So here I just say it's the same as the input measure, which is the amount, and I create it. Okay, I go back to the business models, and as you all know by now, every time we make any changes or updates to calculated measure, we need to do a Quark views rebuild. So that's how the calculated measure is embedded into the Quark view. After the Quark view rebuild is complete, what we are going to do, what I'm going to show is how you can add a calculated measure which is Quark view specific. Let's see if the Quark views build is complete. So I'm going to the process tab. You notice that under the current running process, the Quark view rebuild is still in progress. Probably takes about a minute, and there you go, it has succeeded in around 22 seconds. All right, so let's go back to the business model page, and here this is the button where you add calc measure overrides. Basically, you have defined a calculated measure, but you have the ability to override it at a Quark view level, right? So you select the measure dimension. This is the model dimension name that you have selected. The calculated measure is product total, the one that we just created. Now for the first analytical view, which has the first product hierarchy, we want to write a formula. If you remember, Dasani is under natural parent, right? So this will get us the value, the total sales at the natural drinks parent level. That's what I'm doing over here. So I'm embedding it. I'm adding another override for the same calculated measure, but this time for the sixth Quark view, which has the third hierarchy. So if you see here, hierarchy underscore 3. So this one has the third hierarchy of the product dimension. That is what I'm selecting here, and here I'm trying to pull in the value at energy drinks parent. Okay, the calculated measure is same, but depending on which Quark view you are going to view in your report, the value returned by the calculated measure will change. So I have saved this, and I did a quick Quark view refresh. So this also will be submitted into our backend process. Let's wait for it to complete, and then we can go to the reports module to see how this comes into play. All right, it succeeded successfully. So let me go back and ensure that the measures are in place. So it's called product total. We need to remember the name of the calculated measure because we're going to use it in the report. So now I go back to the reports module. I select the model that we have been working all along. I go to the layout builder. Now in the measure, I'm going to type the name of the calculated attribute over here. Right, so product total, and then we want variance also, right? So let me say product total divided by amount as variance. All right, so that's the variance. Now what are we trying to analyze? We are trying to analyze the sales numbers. Now this is in the second hierarchy. Now channel, we can select just one specific member, which is online channel. Now product, now this is the crux of the matter, right? We are selecting initially the hierarchy 1. Dasani. That's what we are trying to analyze against. Let's select the actual scenario, then time Jan of 2020. Okay, let's quickly hide the ID column, which we have been doing in almost all the reports. Everything looks good. Let's fire away. All right, so there you have it. In the first hierarchy, the sales of Dasani, when it's compared to the total of energy natural drinks, it's 154,000, and then the product total at natural drinks is 568,000, and this is roughly around 3% of the product total. Now, without changing the dimensional intersection, the dimensional intersection is the same. I only change the product hierarchy. So this is the third hierarchy where Dasani is actually a child member under energy drinks. The intersection is still the same, right? And then I run the report. So there you go. So the sales of Dasani remains the same, but if you see the product total, it's actually representing the sales number at the energy drinks parent, and the percentage also is changed, right? The percentage of the Dasani sales versus the overall energy drink sales, it's roughly around 10%. So without changing the dimensional intersection, by simply changing the Quark view that you are viewing at, you are able to have the calculated measure display two different values depending on the Quark view that you are looking at, and this is the power of avatar calculations. Thank you so much, guys.